Welcome back to our last session of today's conference. We have our third roundtable right now. It's on From Theory to Practice, Steps Towards a European Certification System. We have 6 participants for this roundtable. But before we go into that, we would like to ask you a question as the audience to start it off. So please grab your mobile device or your laptop and go to the Slido webpage. And the first question is, would you support an initiative to implement a European certification system for the event industry? You have 5 possible answers. I will repeat the question. Would you support an initiative to implement a European certification system for the event industry? You can answer certainly, yes, undecided, depends, or certainly not. I already see some answers. We'll wait a couple of more seconds. There you go. The answers keep popping up. So, it seems like the majority of you, so 100%, which is actually all of you, would support a European initiative to implement a certification system in the event industry. This is very interesting to know, and with that we'll move to our third roundtable. So up until now we heard a lot about the technical approaches to strategic learning in the creative sector. We also heard about European approaches to competence transfers and mobility, as well as European initiatives to strengthen the competences of professionals in the sector, be it lateral entrants, self-employed or long-term workers. And now in our final step for today, we want to look into the future and bring together what has been discussed throughout the day. And with that, I'm looking forward to our last discussion, and which is looking at the prospects of a European certification system. And we have 2 open questions here. The first one being, if existing certification structures cannot or will not meet the needs of the industry, for whatever reason this may be, should stakeholders strive for a European solution? And what benefits and disadvantages might the European certification system have for employers and employees and for the current nationally based certification systems in place? So, and with that, let me introduce our roundtable participants. We have Zelda Asara, Policy Officer of Transparency and Recognition of Skills and Qualifications at European Commission of the EU. We have Umberto Bellodi, writer of the talk research paper and international officer in Italy. We have Enrico Bressan, head of training department, external certification processes, also from Italy. And we have Anita De Bea, managing director of Pearl, Live Performance Europe, from Belgium. Then again, we have Randall Greenlee from the VPLT, the German Entertainment Technology, and Bastian Schauff, co-founder of the ETIC, the European Council for Qualification and Certification of Stage and Event Technicians from the Netherlands. So, and with that, I will let our participants speak and start off with Mr. Schauff. Could you explain to the audience the work of ETIC and what the reason to found ETIC were? You've written the ETIC handbook, sorry.
Yeah.
Whom is it for and how can it be used? So please.
Yeah, that's a long question. Yeah, we started in 2015 with 4 countries, and actually the idea was to have a kind of a safety passport that works for all the countries in Europe. And the actual reason was that my colleague Chris, who did speak this morning as well, he had a student who was going to Germany, and in Germany she couldn't work on stage because they didn't know what she could do, if she could work safe. So that was the actual reason to start with that. So with the 4 countries, what we did, a lot of talking, of course. And we tried to match all the different safety guidelines. It's mostly guidelines from the different countries into 10 competences. And from those 10 competences, we wrote a handbook, and we made a test, and we trained some assessors. And now we are in the process of actual forming assessment centers in the different countries. Yeah, and the idea, it was, of course, the water was red in all of Europe. So, and with safety, it's kind of the same, and our standards are kind of the same. So you would think it's easy to write, but it took a lot of, every country had its own specials, as in like a single person lift had they couldn't be used in Sweden, for instance. So that needs a lot of talking. So Chris and I, we did write a handbook, and well, we think it's now we did it in a good way, so it's acceptable for most countries. And this is basic health and safety. So it's really basic, and it is actually for everybody who is working on stage. So it could be for the production people as well. I'm teaching at the University of Arts here in Amsterdam as well, light design, but I also teach the production students, and I teach them safety. And for that, I can use only the first 2 chapters of the book, because they don't need to know about how to handle electrical equipment, but it's important for them to know about personal safety and safety for others. How do you do that? And a lot of times it's that we always, in a lot of ways, we end it like someone has to warn a responsible person. That's very important, but you need to know about that. And the way you can use the handbook is actually it's an open source handbook. It's on the website EduTech. I think it was below my name. I did see it. Yeah, so everybody can just use it, read it. It's not very difficult. It's written in Swedish. It's written in Dutch, in English, in German, and we have a Russian translation as well. And there has been a lot of interest. And Janne from Finland is, I don't know if he's translating it as well, but it's kind of hard, of course. So it's spreading around. And the way we do it in the Netherlands is because I'm also involved in the OSAT from Els Wijmans. And the way we try to do it is to have all the different chapters in the education. So it's a kind of what we did talk about in the morning, the micro certification, what's the name? So you can have small slices of all the knowledge. And at the end of the education, you automatically have the safety passport. And in that way, if that same student again goes to Germany from Belgium, and she has had the certification, it's a kind of proof. Then the other side knows what she can do. She will not burn the stage. She will get home safe, and she will be also be safe for her colleagues. She knows how to do things, and it is basic safety. It is basic, but we've got a practical test, and practical test is we want to observe. Observing is very important. It's different from a lot of other tests, and we have seen for a lot of students who done the test, it is still quite hard. It is a real examination. So that's, I think, in overall about ETHE. And it's very nice to hear today that a lot of people are already who know about it or who talk about it. I think it's a great example of how we try to match in different countries all our standards. Because in theater and also in the events, I am from there as well. We can be kind of stubborn the way we want to do things, but I'm for years a teacher now, so I know you can do things on a lot of ways, and my students teach me as well to do things in a completely different way. They push buttons I would never push, and then in that way. So it's always good to have the other way around, and that open vision. You need to have that if you really want to have a good result. I think that's very important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shaw, for answering all those questions. If we have not done so, we're definitely going to read that handbook. So we're going to move on now with Mr. Bresson from Italy. So Italy has passed a decree in January which supports the validation of non-formal and informal learning. What is it that makes this decree so progressive, and what does that mean for education providers?
Hello. Yes, we passed this decree. Actually, there were already set minimum service standards, essential level of performance for validation of not formal and informal learning since 2013. But this decree, it's progressive because it enhances the implementation of a national system of certification of competences. It enhances the coordination among the different subsystems that we have, vocational training, regional vocational training, higher vocational training, universities, education, and so on, in order to enhance the portability of skills throughout the national system. It sets also some deadlines because it's true that we have a lot of provision, that we have a lot of tools, but sometimes we are lagging a little bit behind in the actual implementation. So public bodies that do not have a regularity framework in place, they will have 24 months in order to comply with the minimum service standards for validation of non-formal and informal learning. And we have a lot of principles and tools that are harmonized with European regulations like ESCO and so on. The centrality of the person, the transparency, of the objectivity, the confidentiality of the service, everything is in place. If the second part is the second part of the question is more interesting on our point of view, we are a training provider and we are an organization who is active in active labor policies measures in our region, which is Veneto, northeastern part of Italy. What does it mean for us and for our job? How do we provide training when all these tools, that very interesting tools that enhance the possibility, the opportunities for their workers are in place? Obviously, everything is towards the personalization of training and the lifelong learning perspective of the workers that should retrain, upskill, reskill in order to maintain their employability. And this respect, the most important thing, I think, is to put in place a system of guidance and support to navigate these opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. Because one thing is that it's difficult to understand and also to be aware of the fact that these are things that are possible. Okay, to validate what I learned throughout my working experience, but it's always very important to support people in understanding how they could develop their careers or maintain their employability, for example, in declining sectors or in declining jobs. Usually a worker in a declining job usually thinks, okay, my only job opportunity is here, and they stuck there till the end. But sometimes if you shift the perspective from the profession to the specific tasks and the skills that are in it, you can see that your skills apply also in other sectors, that you can see the gaps in the skill for another job, which is ascending, for example, and you can see which is the training that could fill its gaps. But it's difficult. And usually, people who can, how can I say, use all these tools are those who least need them because they are very qualified workers. So the important thing is to set up a guidance and support system, in my opinion, at least for our workers, low-skilled workers, that makes them aware and capable of using it. So empower people to invest in their own skills and qualifications. We can also use the companies. Obviously, we don't want to disintermediate the companies because, factual skills and everything, and it's important to scale up the training, okay, to invest in their workers. But if we speak of temporary workers, workers with non-standard forms of employment, unemployed people, or part-timers, whatever, these people need support and guidance in order to use systems that are already in place, but nobody knows how to use it or knows them. This is my main opinion on this. We have something really up to the state of the art and everything, but we have to implement on the ground level, and this means a lot of support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bresson. We will continue with Ms. Asara. Ms. Asara, you deal with policy aspects of the European Qualifications Framework, the EQF and qualification databases and their connection at European level. Do you think member states are open to migrating their formal qualification certifications to a European level?
Thank you for the question, and we'll be here today. So what I can tell you is that at European level, we're working with member states, indeed, and the stakeholders, with the relevant stakeholders, mainly from the education and training and employment, to increase really transparency, comparability, understanding of qualifications, and also build and enhance trust between the countries to support lifelong learning. Let me just say that the right to lifelong learning for everyone is the first principle of the European Pillar of Social Rights that was proclaimed in 2017, and that the skills agenda, and we have heard this morning, Randall, to have actually a very nice overview about some European initiatives that can be relevant for the sector. And the skills agenda, launched last year, include a set of actions to make the right to lifelong learning a reality. So support upskilling, reskilling of people, what we have just heard, so to participate in the digital and green transition, and also to recover from the COVID-19 crisis. So this is very important to stress that there is, of course, this broader attention on this topic. And of course, the national qualification framework, the European qualification framework, Europass are all key tools to support lifelong learning and this process. And in this specific case, to give citizens, like learners and employers, easy and direct access to qualifications. Also thanks to a shift that has been toward the description of qualification in terms of learning outcomes. So really outcomes and not input factors. What I would like to say that we have 39 countries participating in the EQF process, actually 38 now that the UK countries have after the Brexit, and 35 have referenced to the European qualification framework. So actually, if we count 27 EU member states, all with exception of only one country that will reference in the coming months, have all referenced to the European qualification framework. And what I would like to stress is, but let me say also that all countries, even those that have not referenced or linked to the European qualification framework, have created national qualification frameworks. And because during this conference, we have spoken a lot about micro-credential, industrial qualifications, it's important to say probably that the national qualification frameworks are opening up towards qualifications that are qualifications awarded outside formal education and training system. So this is very important. Indeed, the European qualification framework is designed really to cover all types and level of qualifications. So this is, I think, it's important in this context. And national qualification frameworks are becoming more visible, more accessible to the main stakeholders and users. And this is also done thanks to the national qualification databases. So to come back to your question, indeed, through by interconnecting all national qualification databases and register, and this can be done through Europass, the new platform, the EQF, the European Qualification Framework, can really function as a comprehensive map of European qualifications. But the EQF, the European Qualification Framework, does not and cannot include directly qualifications. So it doesn't exist a European qualification as such. So just to say maybe that there is exploratory work, but this is really an initial phase on a European degree and a European digital skills certificate. But if you look at the current legal context, there is not a mandate to award or accredit a qualification at European level. And these remain a national competence. And at least in the last year, there has not been political will to change, let's say, to go in a different direction. Indeed, the EQF, the European Qualification Recommendation, clearly states that for qualifications to have an European qualification framework level, the qualifications need to be part of the national qualification framework. But what the recommendation also says, and I think it's quite relevant in this context, it says that it recommends to work, and we are working on setting up procedures together with the member states, the countries, and the relevant stakeholders that can facilitate dialogue between countries for the inclusion of what we call international qualifications. And international qualifications is when the same qualification is awarded in more than one country. So to really set up procedure that can facilitate this exchange of information, we can say this specific type of qualification, because it's a cross-border qualification, and so that the same EQF level can be allocated to that qualification, so to have consistency. So even if it is not possible to issue a pure European qualification, we can say that at the European level, there are tools like indeed the EQF, Europass, and so on to support cooperation, cross-border cooperation, to increase transparency, understanding, comparability of qualifications, support recognition, portability of this qualification to support flexible learning, lifelong learning, employability, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Azzera. Our next panelist is Mr. Balodi. You co-authored the TARC research paper, Transparency in Arts Levels and Qualification, a research based on ESCO. Can you explain to the audience what the subject was and what the key takeaways are?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, this was a project that we've been, well, it's one of those projects which are part of this big family, this big partnership, which is leading the conference also today. I mean, project which is the brother of ETE, which is a brother of TBVAT, which is a brother of VPLT initiatives, and so on. And the talk actually ran from 2015 to 2017, the end of 2017. It was a research project. The main actors was Accademia Teatro alla Scala, which is my organization, STEP with Chris Van Goten, once again Chris Van Goten in the process, and then there was Pearl and Unimay as supporting organization. So the sectoral social dialogue was completely included and embedded into this proposal. Actually, the research was about analyzing contents and structures of existing training and formal education systems, matching them with information coming from the labor market, matching them with existing qualification, and mapping them against the ESCO competencies of the chosen profiles. Well, actually, to make a context of that period, I mean, 2015, 2017, the ESCO was about to be released. So it was specifically focused on that period of time. We came out with a research that was actually stamped, I would say, by the sector of social dialogue with a common position between the employers and the employees association. And we actually set the key elements for some further elements of discussions. In fact, the main outcomes of the talk project was straightly addressed to the, let's say, to the research, the further research of a possible European qualification. So an European qualification that was actually, that should actually be based on some key topics, some key elements, on some pillars. Chris Van Goten this morning briefly spoke about them, and that was transparency, trust, and freedom. So that means the possibility to accept and recognize learning paths between countries, which is transparency, okay? Understanding what is the meaning behind the qualification in terms of operations on the work field, and keep learning methodologies and approaches coherent with the traditional, national development. So transparency, trust, and freedom. This was the three pillars. But moreover, the main input of this research was the fact that probably the central, the focus point of this consideration is probably not the education system, okay, not the ministers of education, let's say it in a more straight way, but it's the labor market, because the labor market is actually anticipating a series of aspects which we find then in the training fields. Getting back to the ESCO, it's a good help in this research, in this process, in terms of terminology, as was previously said, I think, by Randall, because the ESCO was actually extremely important, in my opinion, to try to provide everybody with the same reference, at least in terms of common language, and as well as EQF did some years before. So these are all let's say community efforts that help in this kind of process, which should probably be acknowledged by the stakeholders and above all by the labor market. So this was actually what happened with the third project. What is missing in the third project was probably a follow-up. We tried to get some funding to go further with our process. We designed a project that was the VetNet Live project. We applied in 2019, I guess, but didn't get funding. But we're not surrender. I think we have to keep on with this process as well, in parallel with all the other processes that we are running together, and that we've been, lucky to listen about it today during this conference.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellodi. So to complete our panel today, we have Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear, you're lead of the Pearl. Pearl is the Employees Association of the live performance industry, and as such, you take part in the sectoral social dialogue stirred by the European Commission. What is your view on the current situation on the labor market and needed responses by public authorities to support professionals in the live performance sector?
Thank you very much for your question and for the invitation. I like your question to say what's currently your view on the labor market. If I think back of when our European Social Dialogue Committee was created, our very first activity was on training. And we had a first kind of conference in Turku in 2000, so 20 years ago. And we developed a joint declaration on lifelong learning between Pearl and Unime, who represent the unions of technicians. And I looked back at that, and it starts by saying, or it says, due to technological developments and innovation, the development of lifelong professional training has become an essential requirement for the preservation, the development, and certification of the abilities and qualifications that companies and employees need in today's society, which is characterized by knowledge and innovation. And I thought, it's amazing. We said that 20 years ago, and of course the circumstances have changed. And definitely, of course, with the pandemic, we are in a different situation. But by and large, the scope is still there. And what has evolved a lot is not only that we have had a continuous conversation on lifelong learning and took in what was happening at a European level, all the initiatives that were processing. I remember in 2014, there was a talk about creating European skills councils, and we did a feasibility study for our sector on that. And it led also to new kind of contacts and networking, and we developed this kind of contacts with skills bodies, skills councils, social funds, which are often kind of managed by the employers and the unions, and who provide ad hoc training or dedicated training to the sector. So I've seen a process being developed throughout, where with a lot of attention to also the European scope, because we are very well aware that mobility is a core element of our business. And with the projects that, like what Umberto just mentioned, and the many others, we are very welcoming also the safety passport of the ETIP project. So it all comes together. We just need to find the connections and the networking. I think there's a big community there of people who want to work together, and the ESCO is being an instrument to that. It's kind of bringing the puzzle together. I think we have come to that moment, and to kind of go into a next step. Now, the real challenge, and when I listen to Ms. Azara, is indeed the competences are still with the member states. They are the ones who hold the education certification in hands, but that doesn't mean that as an industry, you cannot take a European approach. And I think that we're not the only sector or the only industry who have a European approach, because you work with international teams. It's not just about mobility, but it's also about bringing people together from different countries. You need to have a kind of common understanding, and in particular for employers, we're very concerned about the health and safety. You are responsible for the people working with you, and then I talk not just for the employees. I also talk about how do we also preserve a safe environment for the self-employed. You cannot just say, oh, I'll protect you because you are the employee, and I won't do anything for you because you're self-employed. That scope has also developed a lot in our discussions with the unions. And we very much, and maybe 20 years ago, we were not so clear in pointing it out, but already the notion was there that we want to move forward as a sector together, and everybody working in the sector has their place and their role. And we've always wanted to take a broad approach to it, and not kind of a divide between employee or self-employed. It's about driving your sector forwards. It's about resilience for the entire sector, and everybody who is working in that should be able to make progress in their training, in getting recognition for what they do. And that's why we found that skills project, skills council project, quite interesting, because it depends a bit, and an interesting case is the UK in that sense. They have this kind of skills council body, and knowing the UK is really a freelance market, it's open to everyone there, and that I think is something. It's good to reflect on that within Europe as well. How do we provide the services? How can we provide the access to the training, but the access also to have the what you have learned to be recognized, etc. How can we develop that also in the different countries in Europe, by setting up those bodies who may be able to do that, and the close collaboration with the education sector or the vocational training sector is to be there, but hand in hand, I think, with the players in the market. So I think there's a lot of say about working together, and in particular about establishing the networks. And a TBVAT project is a very nice example of that, bringing together people from the different sides and talking together towards how do we make Europe, our sector in Europe, resilient. Voilà.
Thank you very much, Mrs. De Beer. We already have 2 questions from the audience, so I will kick it off with the first one. Are traditional European national education providers flexible enough to fulfill the needs of the sector? Who wants to go first?
I might answer that before maybe moving on to Bastian. I do think that there are good national vocational educational providers for our industry. That's really not necessarily the problem, although I know that in Italy, our partner there has said that there, in some ways in Italy, with the exception of where Umberto works in Milan, there's not a lot of vocational educational training specifically for our sector. But I think the challenge is trying to move this recognition of the competences, as Ms. Asara was saying. We have the EQF that most of the countries have their own national framework that's very similar, moving that to a European level. So I'm not so critical on the national educational bodies, but maybe you have something to say to that, Bastian.
What did I want to say? I think it's in my experience, it's a lot of difference in every country, and I think what's very important, like we in our university, we started an EQF 5 and a couple of years ago, and I think it's really important to share with different kind of schools your experiences, because that's not being done enough, not at all. And because of the ETA project, it's linked to what I do as a teacher, as a senior teacher in my school. I get a lot of contacts, and I think it's really important. And I don't know how to start that, and ETA could be a way to start it, because if we really are going to have these assessment centers, you can exchange information better, and that's important. But it's really so different in every country, and everybody is doing it in the same in a different kind of way. But it is because we are a kind of a new profession. Why did I start teaching? I started teaching in 2004 because I thought what I'm doing is not. I'm a sociologist. I'm light designer as well, but in basics I studied sociology, and I'm from a complete different field. But when I was touring through the Netherlands, I thought, why don't they all do it in the same way? Why aren't they doing the things? That's kind of strange. And that's why I thought, I'm going to teach, because I have seen something, and now I can teach other people how to do so. And about lifelong learning, because I wanted to say something about that as well. I think it starts with the teachers, because I have to teach my students how to work with technology that's not there yet. I have to be, because our schools, we are not rich. We can't have all the best equipment. We can have some equipment, but not the best one. But so I have to teach my students how to get their knowledge on a good level, and then for that you need a different kind of vision how to do that. And I think that's important as well. So it's not only exchanging experiences because Chris in Belgium is doing something with EQ5, something completely different than we are doing. And we can learn from that. And I did teach in Sweden as well. And in Sweden, they are doing it. I had students from 18 till 58. I never had that, because they are doing it in a completely different way. But what I do there, what I teach them, is the same. And the way I teach them is how you can't do that in the basic, but if you go further on, it's very important to learn them how to learn. This is a broad answer.
Thank you very much for answering the first question. We'll move to the second one. How could Europass improve the situation of professionals from the event industry?
I think it's for me, this question. Look at how the Europass, the point here is that Europass, the new platform that has been launched, that was launched last year, June 2020, really try to be a tool for any kind of people to manage their own career and their own learning. So when you ask me this question about the professional, So Europass is composed by some elements, okay, like there is an e-portfolio, there is the possibility to issue digital credentials, and there is a part on information. So with this question, I see here 2 points, because one is about and actually is also linked a bit to the previous question, so to what the previous speaker were commenting. So the part on information, again, also includes this publication of national qualification database and registers. And the idea there is really also to sort of exchange information on what exists. So, to look at what other countries are doing, if exists similar qualifications, it's just the name or also the content, so the learning outcome. So we're really trying to work also now on how, on the description of learning outcome for publication on databases, to try to deepen transparency of such information. So this is one, but of course, it always depends from information provided by countries, but there is really an effort to share this information. Also, when I think about the possibility of renewing and updating qualifications, so I'm looking at what is happening in other countries, and this is a part of the reply. Let's say, so this having information on qualifications and also actually on learning opportunities. Okay, so this is a side, and hopefully, this is, of course, is a long process. It needs really common effort, national and European level, to also see how qualification link between them and how an individual can build on what he or she already has. On the other side, we have the Europass profile, so that actually this is, so maybe most of the people probably know the Europass CV, okay? And now with the launch of the new Europass, this has completely changed, because it's really an online portfolio that is much more than a curriculum. And individual can really use it as a sort of personal development folder, okay? So individual really have the possibility, so also people coming especially from this kind of industry, the event industry, the possibility to record, register, describe, document. We have heard a lot this word this morning when talking also about validation. So also the possibility of documenting in different ways, skills, work, learning experience, interest, and so on. It's really a possibility to showcase a person's development process, a person's achievements in one or several areas, and to present them to others, because there is also, of course, the possibility to share, and then there is a portfolio where you can, of course, store your credentials, digital credentials that can be full qualification, micro credential, whatever. So I hope this gives a quick overview of how Europass could help.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Asara. We have one more question. How should the education and certification landscape in the event industry should look like post-COVID in an ideal world?
What do you think, Umberto? What should it look like in an ideal world?
Why me?
Because you've worked so long in it. I mean, basically what people are asking is, we have in the Europass, by the way, the senior event technology specialist and the event technology specialist as former qualifications in Germany. But I think we're so mobile, we're so international. So what would it look like? I mean, for me, it would look like no matter where people go from formal or from non-formal validated learning outcomes, that they can go wherever they want to within Europe, and people will understand what they can do. Right?
Your point is strong. Well, what makes me worried is the part of the question related to the post-COVID. I mean, I don't want to say that. I don't want to, let's say, consider that after COVID we have to change things so much. I mean, I can understand all the improvement that this crisis really gave to our way of working. I mean, this that we are facing today through digital conference is an improvement, actually. But on the other hand, I cannot accept that arts and culture becomes something exclusively digital. I mean, the old concept of mobility, when I think about our students or the young workers or even people that are working since a long time in the sector, the mobility must be same kind of mobility. I mean, it must be improved at least, you know. So the efforts of the training center, of the training institution, of the vet providers should move towards this direction, in my opinion. So at least my organization will work in this sense. I remember, Randall, we had, I think, a conference I think it was the end of 2019, and it was in Sweden, Gothenburg. And we made some work groups, and we tried to figure out which should be something ideal in terms of a communitarian way of working. And one of the examples that came out, it was that in the same time there was a strong need of employees in Germany about machinists and about electricians, and at the same time in southern Italy there was free courses working on about training electrician and machinists. But in Italy, there wasn't the right labor market demand for people, while in Germany, there was a demand. So this is the connection that we need. And still, we have to work in this direction. And still, when we think about European certifications, we have to think that they are leading to this mutual understanding to make contact between people and organizations towards the whole European countries.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions from the audience. We are perfect in time. Randall, do you have some final remarks or final questions for the other participants?
I'm just thinking about the fact that there's so much to say about this topic, and with such good speakers here, it would be good if we had more time today. But no, I don't think so, unless anyone from the panel would like to say something else. I think we heard some really interesting points of what's going on in Europe. But I would simply agree with Umberto. You know, and Anita was talking about this as well. The mobility within our industry is something very important, and we need to make that as easy as possible. And like Umberto was saying, and I think Ms. Asara would also agree, you know, part of the entire thing that DG Employment is working on is to change that fact. There are workers in Southern Italy that need jobs. There are job availabilities somewhere else, and we're not getting that done. So I think that's a good point to end with today. But I'm not trying to close the discussion.
I just wanted to add a little thing on that, because within the context, of course, of the crisis, we were thinking like, yes, we see and we hear. And it was also mentioned in the previous panel, the loss of skills, people leaving the sector, of course, because who would have thought that it would take such a long time? I was one of the first naive people who were thinking, oh, after 3 weeks, I will go back normal to work. But it is a reality. And we thought, is there something small we could do? And we then said, well, why don't we collect through our members a list of job platforms? Where are the job platforms? What websites are available? Because, and it was mentioned, a lot of the jobs are happening by, oh, I know this person and I know that person and I have heard from that one, he's a good guy, and things like that. And it also made me see that actually there are big gaps. There's hardly, in some countries, there are hardly like websites or anybody. I mean, yeah, maybe individual theaters or so may post vacancies for the people they need, but nothing like sectoral initiatives. It's really more, say, a bit more Western Europe where we see that. And of course, you have the EURES network with general employment services. But when I look sectoral, there are big gaps. So how are people supposed to find the jobs? How would this group from Southern Italy be able to know that there are jobs needed in Germany? So I think it's also something we have to consider working on and make more available, because now we are such a closed community, and that's not a good signal. People cannot come in. People who want to come in, who are new entrants, find it difficult. There was a research done 2 years ago by our member of Society of London Theatre, and they found out that indeed we are a very closed community, and work has to be done to open it, also in terms of diversity and things like that. There's work on the table. So if you're interested, you can go to our website. There's the job platform website, and anyone who has platforms or job sites that we don't know of, please send it to us and we post them as well. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much for those final remarks, Mrs. De Beer. I think with that we are done for today. I would really say a big thank you.
I think Ms. Azaro still wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
No, very quickly, maybe not. Sorry. No, because just on what Anita was saying, and to link to the previous question, I answer maybe, and to complete my answer about how Aeropass can help, that indeed, it doesn't contain only information on qualifications and learning opportunity, that of course is important, but also information on jobs. And this is coming exactly from Euros that was mentioning. And actually, and this is really the last thing, when I spoke about this portfolio that people can really create, and we have already 2 million people actually that have created this portfolio and can really enrich with a lot of information. So not the typical standard information, but enrich that. And we're working on a recommendation system. So this still needs to be optimized, but based on what is written, recorded in the profile, the user can get course and job suggestions. So tailored course and job suggestion. But of course, this is still a tool that has to improve, as you can imagine. It has a lot of potential, but it needs a lot of work as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sarah. So before I quit now, are there any final remarks? Otherwise, I will say a big thank you to all of you. We really appreciate it that you took the time to be with us today and for the lively discussions. We heard a lot of great things, great initiatives, and let's stay in touch with that. So thanks to all the participants, and talk to you soon. Bye. And for our audience now, we got one final survey question, so please grab your phone or your laptop and go to the Slido website to answer the following question. Would you be open to moving towards a European certification system based on learning outcomes from formal, informal, and non-formal learning outcomes? So you have 5 possible answers for this. Take your time. We already see the first people answering. I will repeat the question. Would you be open to moving towards a European certification system based on learning outcomes from formal, informal, and non-formal learning? So this is a very clear answer up until now. We'll wait a couple of more moments. Let's see if we get some other answers too. Mm-hmm. It seems like that the majority of you is open to moving towards a European certification system. That is definitely good to hear. Thank you very much for answering the question. And now we'll wrap it up for today. So I think in today's conference, we heard a lot about the challenges we're facing in the event industry, in the area of vocational educational training and certification. And also the pandemic, as devastating as it may be, offers new opportunities to rethink some of the traditional ways of dealing with learning outcomes and certification. So it appears that the European Union has some suggestions and solutions on the table. And now it's up to the member states and stakeholders to decide if these are implemented or not. So let's see what the future will bring. And with that, I want to say a big thank you to all of the speakers. Special thanks to Professor Brown for his keynote speech and to all our panelist members for the lively discussion. And also to you as an audience for asking all your questions and participating in the surveys. Thank you very much. And again, thanks to our sponsors, the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union, for funding this conference. And with that, I leave you for today. Have a nice rest of the day and please stay safe. Thank you.